Greetings, folks, and welcome back to the inescapable, desolate, and infinitely cramped void. Another year in the 2020s has come and gone, and channel tradition, plus a desire to conclude the 3-month video gap I've got going and begin working on some big video projects for next year, dictates that I create a year in review. And oh boy, I've got a lot to talk about. This year definitely wasn't a boring one. But without further comment, well, for now, let's take a metaphorical voyage through the year of our Lord 2024 and take a look-see at the content I put in the public eye this year. And, unlike last year, I'll throw in the second channel's videos at the end.
Praised Hitler in a speech given during the campaign for independence and banned the word intellectual. The most bizarre election was a tight one, and Cleveland only prevailed because of two things, both involving New York. Firstly, he was the current governor of New York, and 118 seats. As for the cadets, they had no hopes of reclaiming their majority, and many even considered governing in a coalition with the progressists. However, it all depended on which focus tickled your fancy more, National Steel Car or Send in the Zombies. Outside of that, keeping with it being a balanced budget amendment. Known as the Contract with America, the platform helped the party sweep the elections. The Republicans won back both houses of Congress. Paul's 12-year-old nephew, King Peter II. Even more confusing, the Prime Minister of the time, Milan Stojadinovic, is the country's fascist leader.
And with that, let's get into the first main point of discussion. The channel had a bit of a renaissance this year, as I finally found my mojo with the essay videos. I really do enjoy making them, and they seem to be doing well. The embarrassing electoral episodes, which, by the way, will get a second part sometime early next year, video currently sits as the 7th most viewed video on the channel. The political leaders video managed to surge past that to number 5. As a matter of fact, 4 of the top 11 videos on this channel were uploaded this year. Looking back, I'm glad I made the switch to Resolve as an editor. It's allowed me to do much more than was ever possible with Movie Maker. Yes, you may laugh at me now. The new sprites also provided me with a greater tool set to work with, and I'm all set to keep on trucking next year. As for the second channel, not very much changed. But I enjoy making the videos there, and so I consider them a win in my book. With that said, I really don't like to toot my own horn, and I'm very thankful for all the support you folks have given. I'm glad you're still enjoying my shit. On the personal side, wow. This year was a clusterfuck. There were some major victories, but there were a lot of defeats. I further advanced my place in the world, and that's all I'll say without going into specifics. However, the search for colleges and the pressure of finishing high school in a strong place has definitely taken its toll on me, and my already fragile mental health is spiraling faster than perhaps even in 2022. If you can't tell, I'm sick as I'm recording this right now. Those few places of refuge and those triumphs are the only thing keeping this year ahead of 2022. In terms of ranking the year, 2024 falls at the second worst spot, bumping 2023 up a spot. But I really don't care about any of this, and I doubt you do either. Let's get into the actually important stuff of the year. In previous years, new media released that year was basically shoved in at the very end of the video, if at all, and I feel that doesn't do it justice. As such, I'm giving media its own section this year. I'll begin by listing new media released this year that I enjoy, be it music, movies, or games. Following the release of the Beatles' likely final new song, Now and Then, last year, it came as a welcome surprise to hear the announcement of a new single from Billy Joel. On February 1st, 2024, the world was introduced to a fantastic piece entitled Turn the Lights Back On. Unfortunately, despite its popularity transcending generations, a coalition of tasteless bastards denied this song its rightful place at number 1 on the Billboard charts, instead relegating it to a disappointing 62. Despite that, it doesn't detract from how phenomenal the song is. I personally think it's better than Now and Then, but I consider these two songs the sole saviors of this decade musically. In terms of games, The Political Machine 2024, the newest installment in the eponymous series, was released, and I'm still trying to figure out how it compares to 2020. A lot has changed from the previous game, but I like both games' separate mechanics. Perhaps that could be an idea for the second channel, comparing the two games. Also released this year was Age of History 3, which I've heard good things about but have yet to play, and 2 DLCs for Hoi 4, Trial of Allegiance and Goethe Dammerung. The former, a South American country pack, was torched by the community upon its release, but I personally think it's unfairly maligned. It's not perfect, but it passes in my opinion. The latter, a rework to atomic weaponry forts, special projects in Central Europe, was much larger in scope and blew me away upon release. There was a staggering amount of work put into this DLC, and the initial community community response seems to be overwhelmingly positive. I'd have to agree with them wholeheartedly. I'd also like to introduce a lot of older media to my classification of classics. My personal old man definition of a classic is anything over 40 years old, which translates to anything released in 1984. Some of the things that can now be considered classics in my books include the songs One Night in Bangkok, Last Christmas, and Do They Know It's Christmas, the albums Born in the USA, The Works, Like a Virgin, Make It Big, The Last in Line, The Shalni Kamshatki, Breaking Hearts, Ride the Lightning, Give My Regards to Broad Street, Somebody's Watching Me, and Weird Al Yankovic in 3D, the movies Beverly Hills Cop, Ghostbusters, Romancing the Stone, Gremlins, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, The Karate Kid, and Johnny Dangerously, the first season and most of the second season of the American sitcom Night Court, the Where's the Beef commercials from Wendy's, and anything related to that year's elections in the United States and Canada, including the iconic quotes, "This is more of a tale of two cities, we begin bombing in 5 minutes, I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience, well, Minnesota would have been nice, and you had an option, sir." When compared to the garbage put out nowadays, sure does make you miss the classics, doesn't it? Well, this year was more chaotic than 2023, and in my opinion, much more eventful. The wars in Ukraine and Israel dragged on, and as if the Middle East couldn't get any more violence, the Syrian civil war kicked back into life again and ended within a month as opposition forces swept city after city before finally taking the capital of Damascus. BRICS officially welcomed 4 new members, and Sweden finally ascended into NATO. Former President Carter turned 100, becoming the first centenarian to have ever served as United States president. The Notre Dame finally reopened. Queen Margaretha II of Denmark abdicated in January, and South Korea went into martial law for about 5 seconds. The year was very election heavy, too. Russia held their always free and fair elections where you could vote for, Putin, a communist, or face the wall. Mexico elected some nutjob pagan. The Labour Party won a crushing landslide in the UK. Sri Lanka saw a Democratic Socialist Third Party jump from 3 seats to 159 in a majority, and Japan chose a new prime minister, but at the expense of the LDP's majority. Total chaos erupted in the French elections as far-right and far-left parties took turns winning each of the 2 rounds, resulting in a conservative Democratic prime minister being appointed by President Macron, which was then no confidence in just 3 months. For the first time since the country gained its independence in 1966, Botswana voted out the ruling party of 58 years in a landslide. And after arguably one of the most wackadoodle campaign seasons in recent history, the United States re-elected Donald Trump, inadvertently KOing the German government in the process. Also held were elections to the House and Senate, which had some big dubs, but also some disappointing defeats. Anyways, someone took pot shots at Robert Fico and Donald Trump. There was a really underwhelming solar eclipse that occurred directly above my area. Kudos to the overcast skies. The Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore collapsed. Ethiopia announced her plans to recognize Somaliland, and the US may follow soon after. Indonesia sorta kinda moved its capital city. Hurricanes Helene and Milton slapped the hell out of Florida and the American Southeast in the span of a few weeks, and the Summer Olympics in Paris featured blasphemy, possible Turkish hitmen, and some poor bastard named Anthony Amarati. Also, sorry I didn't put this sooner, but I just remembered they found a new Mozart composition. This year also saw a lot of high-profile deaths, political ones in particular. Major politicians who passed on in 2024 include Joe Lieberman, George Nethercutt, Brian Mulroney, Ed Broadbent, Nikolai Ryzhkov, Alexei Navalny, Ibrahim Raizi, Ismail Haniyeh, Yahya Sinwar, Saleh El Aruri, Hassan Nasrallah, and Sebastian Piñera. Other high-profile figures who died this year included Willie Mays, Pete Rose, O.J. Simpson, Bill Anders, James Earl Jones, Shelley Duvall, Morgan Spurlock, Jim Abrahams, and Donald Sutherland. To say this year was jam-packed would be to state the obvious, in both a good and bad way. But...
Man, I'm dead.
The year 2024 will be one to remember for decades to come. It marked a lot of major developments, both in my life and the history of the world, and I imagine we'll be feeling most of the year's repercussions for decades to come. I hope I speak for all of us when I say good riddance 2024! And with that, I hope you've enjoyed the content on this channel and the second channel put out this past year. I hope to keep on going in 2025. If you haven't yet, feel free to source Sybil and comment your thoughts on this crazy 366-day period. And finally, Happy New Year, everyone! Now, let's all take a cup of kindness yet, drink our water, and, I don't know, start falling over?